But Gab, you wanted to start by something that you on the ground have experienced a bit with this tournament.
Yeah, it's what a lot of people here are talking in the US, and it's the attendances, because they've kind of been all over the shop. You saw, for example, when Chelsea played LAFC, it was something like 24,000 in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is enormous. And people pointed out that when they played Newcastle 2 years ago, they sold it out. Obviously, the Ulsan Mamelodi Sundowns, for those of us who watched it, not only was it delayed by an electrical storm, 3,400 in attendance. Again, you can say it's Orlando. It's a team from South Korea against a team from South Africa. It's something that FIFA are being criticized for. I think it's much more complex than that. And I think we have to realize we don't have a benchmark here. This is not the actual World Cup. This is the Club World Cup. But maybe later on in the show, in the podcast segment, we'll get into this a little bit more, some of the dynamics. And also because we're on the website, we'll be doing a deeper dive into this for those who are interested. But Jules, shall we talk about Real Madrid? Xabi Alonso's debut against Simone Inzaghi, also in his debut, and it finishes 1-1 against El Hilal.
Yeah, and if you had never showed me the bench, Gab, and who was the Real Madrid manager, I would have told you that Carlo Ancelotti did Carlo Ancelotti things, really, and that team did what it did all season long. And it's only then when we saw, at times, I felt quite frustrated Xabi Alonso, that was quite honest and critical after the game as well on the performance of his player, that you say, okay, it's not Carlo Ancelotti anymore, it's a new manager, and we had high hopes, and this is only the beginning. He's only been there 2 minutes, so let's probably not judge too much on it. But he really felt, I don't know how you saw it, but I felt it watching on television, that he felt very much like what we've seen all season long from Real Madrid. Not much pressure on the ball, out of possession. With the ball, not much creativity either. They score a goal on transition, which is what they're really good at, let's be honest here. And that's it. And we saw Trent's debut, Dean Huijsen's debut, which have been, some highs and some lows in their performances. But overall, I just felt it a little bit underwhelmed from Real Madrid.
Yeah, although they might come back and say, well, wait a minute, we missed a penalty late on. Valverde, of course, Bruno coming up big, as if it were the World Cup all over again. I don't know if we're going to read too much. You need to read too much into it for those reasons. He hasn't had time to work. It's coming late. They're going to grow into it. We're going to start seeing some of these concepts. But what I wonder is, are we going to see much more of Gonzalo up front? And is this a good thing?
No, definitely not. No. I mean, Mbappe had fever. He's still at the hotel. Precaution. Hendrik is injured. I think Gonzalo is there. Like a lot of clubs, they've brought a lot of kids in to be able to play, rotate sometimes. In this case, he was the only number 9 available. You could have played Vini there or Rodrigo, of course, but it was the more traditional one. He got lucky on his goal, which was a tap-in that he almost missed, let's be honest here. And then there's a good header, but that was it. So I'm not sure we've seen much more of him outside of being just a squad player that can step in when Xabi Alonso wants. It's interesting that for the rest, it was very similar. It's a back 4 when Xabi Alonso is a back 3 man, obviously, as we know. So that might come later, again, with a bit more time to work. But for now, it was a 4-3-3 like we've been pretty used to seeing it.
Yeah, and you wonder how that's gonna evolve going forward. Like, there's a ton on his plate. I'm not gonna be in any kind of position of judging Real Madrid and Xabi Alonso's work right now. What is pretty evident, though, is Florentino Perez was in attendance up in the stands. And, people say this competition is about money. Real Madrid very aware of the fact that, if they win it, they bring back close to 100 million euros. And, that is a big chunk of their annual turnover, potentially. So we know that, I think the screws are going to start to turn early. Jules, a lot of curiosity about the debut of Trent Alexander-Arnold, who, of course, from here on out is just Trent. How'd you see it?
Yeah, and again, I had maybe too many too high expectations because he's just arrived, a bit like Xabi Alonso. He seemed a little bit lost at times, and what he was trying to do. The rest of the team around him, who have never played with an invented right back, for example, are just, again, we need to adjust to Trent's new position, or Trent's position, which is new for them. So there's a lot of work to do, but I just think if you look at his stats from last night and his usual start, let's say he only played 65 minutes, but in terms of how many touches he got, in terms of what he did with the ball, it's quite similar to what he used to at Liverpool. The problem is it's not what the team was used to have as a right back, and I think this is where the work starts really for Xabi Alonso. Not just how to incorporate Trent in there and make him a big part of this team and be a key player with the ball, for example. It's just who do you play around him, what you ask of him defensively. Because again, yesterday, 5 duels, he only won 1, 5 crosses, there's only 1 successful. There's, I think, 89% pass accuracy, but the kind of pass you expect him to make forwards, they were the ones that he missed. There's a great diagonal early on in the second half for Vini, which I think is something that he could really add to this team, but he only did it once. So again, normal. It's normal. There's a lot of work for them to do to make him a big part of this team, but I just don't think it's going to be easy.
Let's try to project forward, because I'm trying to figure this out, right? So we know Xabi Alonso has played a lot of back three, and we also know that one of the big issues with this team last year was that the lack of a creative passer in midfield, the post Toni Kroos era and whatnot. None of us believe that Alexander-Arnold's going to go back to playing in midfield, but given the way he plays right back, that he's not somebody who's going to go down the wing and skin you and put in crosses. If he does go to a back three, I'm not sure you really see him in the wing back role.
No, you're right.
Could he be a third center back who steps into midfield? And I use the word center back very, very loosely.
Yeah, I'm not sure he can do that either. And that's the thing. And again, at Liverpool, what made him also very special and good is the triangle with Mo Salah and Jordan Henderson at the time, especially. I think his best season is probably 21-22, even if they don't win the league that season or the Champions League, but it was still very good. And there was that triangle that was so efficient. Who would you play ahead of him? Let's say it's a 4-3-3 and that Xabi Alonso for now sticks to that. Who is your right midfielder? Is it Valverde? Is it somebody else? Who's your right winger? Is it Rodrigo if he stays at the club? If it's not, is it an Arda Güler? Is it Mastantuono? Is it Brahim? Is it somebody else that comes if Rodrigo goes? But it feels like to also help Trent and get the best out of Trent, you need to get this triangle right. So not just if it's a back 4, back 3 that suits your team and suits Trent the best. Also, who are those 2 players who will be the key more than who plays at left back or left wing back or left winger, for example, for Trent, is those 2 players really that I think will also have a big impact on how good he is for this team or not. That right midfielder will have to help him defensively a lot. Remember Jordan Henderson again. The right winger, like a Salah, could help him to be able to have that freedom on the ball, to ping those passes to whoever he wants and be that creative touch that you rightly said he is and they need. But again, if you get the not the right winger, then that might not work out exactly as you want to. So I think there's a lot of thinking, planning, working on to do to get that side of the team right. And then there's all the rest as well, by the way, because we're only talking about Trent, but I'm not sure the rest works that well so far as we saw last night.
I think that's exactly it, Jules. I mean, if we're going to go and disassemble the whole team and put it back together again to suit Trent, to suit one player, it's Trent, sure, but there's other players who, I'll come out and say it, are more important than Trent and are better, and the team has invested more in, from Jude Bellingham to Vini to obviously Kylian Mbappe. So you would think if Xabi Alonso is going to be, is going to have to be pragmatic, come up with, ask people to make sacrifices, move things around, surely you would do it for your big difference makers who you expect to be Mbappe, Bellingham, and Vini, not at this stage for your free agent right back signing. So I think it's going to be really interesting how this pans out and how he makes the pieces fit together. And also back 3, I'm not sure, even with Heisen and I'm not sure you're going to have the numbers to do that. So I personally would expect them to go 4-3-3, keep things a little simpler, at least for the first few months.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But Jules, I want to go back to this issue of staying in a competition in the U.S. I feel like we're time traveling back to 1994 when there was a lot of debates, about when you schedule the game, who plays when. We've talked about the attendances a little bit. We'll get to that in a minute. One thing that struck a lot of people is the kickoff times here on the East Coast, United States, anyway, are sort of 12, 3, 6, and 9, which is pretty standard. You have a game, and then there's a break, and there's another game, and so on. One of the arguments, a lot of the bigger teams have kicked off at 12 or at 3 o'clock, the big European sides. And the idea is that, it's for television in Europe because it's prime time there. Whereas, those 9 p.m. East Coast kickoffs kick off at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning in Europe. Is this something that you think is intentional? Is this something they should be paying attention to, or to try to get people interested? Because it comes at the expense of making teams go out and play in the midday sun, which is not really a great thing, as we saw from Atletico, as we saw from Real Madrid as well, playing out there on the West Coast with a noon kickoff local time.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's an issue, but I don't think it's an issue that you can solve. Of course, you want your biggest market really for this tournament is, again, well, maybe not your biggest market, but it's Europe, but people are going to tune in to watch their teams, or to watch the teams that they used to watch from their leagues, from their country, from their favorite players, whatever. So you can understand why FIFA want Real Madrid to play at 8 o'clock in the UK or 9 o'clock in Central Europe, for example. That makes a lot of sense, more than at 2 a.m. Especially when it's a big game. So when they would play against another European team or a top team, or even later in the competition, is to the detriment of the players and the quality of the games. There's no doubt, Gabi, for sure. We saw a lot of games, those early kickoffs start well, good first half, and then the rhythm drop naturally because it's 40 degrees, the humidity is 70%. It's, again, even lunch kickoff time on a Saturday in the UK, some players struggle with it. So imagine just over there in the US with all the thing we've just explained. So I don't know if there's a right answer or if there's a solution to make it differently. I think it's just the way it is, and it would be probably similar at the World Cup as well next year.
Yeah, and having games with these earlier daytime kickoffs has had another impact, and it's a big impact on attendance, right? Because the thinking is people are at work and so on. People are going to take time off work and whatever. I'm in two minds about this, in the sense that sometimes more than one thing can be true, Jules. Yeah, obviously, if your team isn't playing, the team that you support, but there's a Club World Cup game in your town, are you going to take time off work, blah, 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 to go and, and watch another team? Maybe not. But then again, this is a big country. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of kids. The school has finished. There's no question that they could have done a better job in terms of really promoting the crap out of it. Going to local football academies, bringing kids in, just to put more people in the stands. And I think this has been a learning process. When we see the big European clubs come on tour to the US and they're in sold out stadiums, and there's a lot of work that goes into it from the local promoters and from the clubs themselves, getting their supporters groups out there and whatever, to make sure that the stadiums are full.
But those kickoffs are late because those European clubs don't care if back home fans watch at 4 a.m. or not, because some of those games are not even broadcasted in the UK or in France or in Germany or in Italy. And so that's easier then, because you can plan your game at 8 p.m. on the West Coast, for example, which people would turn up. It's a lovely evening in LA. People are out. You go out. It makes sense, because then in that case, you don't really care about European market.
Yeah.
And those clubs just care about the US market. That's why they're there on tour. That's who they want to target. So it's logic. For this one, it's a different dynamic, right? Because for FIFA's interest, you also want those big European teams at that in those kind of time slot, and that's where the dilemma and a bit of difficulty is.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think this whole FIFA ticketing operation, it just feels as if it's been rushed.
Yeah.
They haven't fully thought things through. They haven't fully thought through the differences between the different markets. And some people say they maybe should have. I was just talking to somebody about this, that they could have leaned more on the local expertise, because in this country, you can market things, you can put bums on seats. That they say it can be more difficult, but for the right event, you can do it. One thing I wanted to ask you about in terms of how it's been received in Europe, part of the debate has been, some of these big stadiums that are near empty. I was at the Link the other day, and like I said, it wasn't bad. I think it was about 35,000 in a 68,000 seat stadium, Lincoln Financial Field, where my Philadelphia Eagles play. But it wasn't great either. And some people had said, well, we should have had it in smaller stadiums. And it would have looked good because the stadium would have looked full. Some stadiums, of course, are smaller, like Audi Field or where Ulsan played Mamelodi and Sundowns in Orlando. Would you have wanted the MLS stadiums as opposed to the big NFL ones?
Yeah, and I said it to you on the show before. I can understand the economic dynamic there and what you want from a FIFA point of view and tickets and everything. And of course, a bigger stadium, nicer stadium is better. But it looks better if it's full. It doesn't look that great if it's half empty, and there's a lot of empty seats everywhere. So I've always thought that some of those games could have been easily scheduled in smaller arenas and smaller stadiums. But again, I completely understand the finance side of it, and I've got no issue with it. If it's still better, for example, for FIFA to have 40,000 people in a 70,000 seater than 25 in a 25,000 seater, for example. That I've got no problem with that.
Yeah, I think FIFA also made it a point that and that's why they introduced the dynamic pricing, and they got hammered for this because the prices were so high at the start for tickets. But of course, they crashed just about everywhere. They said, we want to make sure that anybody who wants to go to a game can go to a game. We have these big stadiums. It's also a question of seeing how these stadiums work, the logistics ahead of the World Cup. And they say that this was part of the thinking, and they point out that they got crowds of 80,000, right, in LA for PSG and Atletico Madrid, for example, right?
Yeah.
So they can put them out there. Obviously, Ulsan against Sundowns in Orlando was going to be a much tougher sell, especially when there's an electrical storm. I just hope, Jules, that that they learn things ahead of the World Cup. And there is a lot to learn, because there's a lot going on in this country right now, right down to the weather. We've already had 2 games that were delayed because of weather, which seems crazy in June. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I think it's a learning exercise, and hopefully they get this right come next summer. All right, enough Real Madrid. How about some quick hits instead?
Let's go, Gav.
Chelsea roll to a 2-0 win over LAFC as we get to see Delap on his debut coming off the bench. Jules, no miracles from not one, but 2 French World Cup winners for LAFC.
Yeah, although I thought they played okay in that second half. Denis Bouanga, who's not one of the 2 World Cup winners, obviously, that you mentioned, who are Hugo Lloris, who played the whole game, and Olivier Giroud came on at half-time. Bouanga had 2 good chances, 2 good saves by Robert Sanchez. But apart from that, it was pretty routine from Chelsea. Not perfect at all. Nico Jackson first started up front, then it was Delap. Delap, I thought, looked really good coming on. His already relationship with Cole Palmer, who they knew each other before from City Academy, and then obviously the under-21, I think is very promising. And we saw a bit of kind of argy-bargy between Bouanga and Neto and celebrations and things like that, winding each other up, which I think is really cool. So I enjoyed that game, Gabi.
Yeah, and Chelsea, no question about it. I think maybe except for Enzo, that is pretty much his first choice 11.
Manchester City beat Wydad Casablanca 2-0 thanks to first half goals from Foden and Doku. Gab, you were there. How did they look?
So they look like they're a lot more talented than the opposition. They had Reinders and Ryan Shirky starting. They looked an absolute mess, like an absolute cluster mess at the back. Wydad Casablanca, phenomenal fans. A bit like the Morocco fans at the World Cup. Obviously, there's a history there. We saw some neat pyro at one thing, which I know we're not supposed to condone, but it still looks cool in the stadium. Hopefully, it's all safe and whatnot. But yeah, Casablanca could have had several in the first half. Every time they go on the break. Now that back four with Rico Lewis and Vitor Reis and Nathan Ake and Nico on the other side, this is not going to be his back four going forward, I would assume. They have a lot to sort out, but the talent is there on the other end. It'll be interesting how he fits the pieces together. Interesting too to see Reinders play in front of the back four. I'm assuming with a fit Rodri, that's not going to happen. River Plate defeat Urawa Red Diamonds 3-1, and we got to see the much hyped Franco Mastantuono. Jules, the kid likes to dribble.
Yeah, he loves dribbling. Four successful dribble out of the 8 that he tried. To be fair, and maybe it's my fault, I had high expectation. I think a lot of people had to watch him in this first Club World Cup game because the hype has been so big, especially since the move to Real Madrid. So I wanted to see him. I wanted to see a lot, and really, it was a little bit underwhelming. There was some good moments, and you could see that he's special on the ball, of course, that left foot, his first touches, what he does. He clearly has a lot of personality as well on the pitch. He switches the ball to Acuna on the first goal, for example, which is great. There's a shot by the keeper, but there was not much else really in his performance. So he's still very young at 17. There will be more. There's more to come from him. But I was just, because we hyped him so much, like Estevao with Palmeiras a few days ago, and we wanted to see, and then we didn't see much. I was kind of left a little bit, okay, let's wait at the next game. But yeah, good win for River. Good performance. They're very solid. They're a good team. Cachardo doing another good job again. Salzburg were supposed to be the ugly ducklings in their group, but they got a win on the debut, 2-1 over Pachuca from Mexico. Fun to see Karim Onisiwo, who's 33, which, to be fair, means 53 in the Red Bull in the Salzburg years, get the winner as well, Gab.
Yeah, who'd have thought Salzburg, who everybody was kind of like among the European heavyweights, ooh, what are these guys doing here? And of course, coming off that awful season that they had. And then when I saw Onisiwo, or when I heard the name Onisiwo, I said, oh, can't be the same guy. Must be his son, perhaps, or a different Onisiwo. But no, it's him. They turned it around. They're top of the table in this group for now, given the draw between Real Madrid and Al Hilal. I don't know what it means, but I think it means some of the others are in trouble. And Pachuca, I think, certainly disappointed with this result. I think they had pretty high expectations, despite being in a very tough group of going through. And now it's all very much uphill, Jules. Jules, we're not done because we have more quick hits. Fabrizio Romano reports that Barcelona have agreed personal terms with Nico Williams. Jules, it's a 6-year deal. Now all they have to do is pay the release clause and, of course, get La Liga and Mr. Tebas to approve it.
Yeah, release clause, which is 60 million euros. So that's a lot of money. I know Nico is a very good player, young. He would fit perfectly what Hansi Flick wants to do. We can then look into tactically where does that leave Rafinha, and how do you play Rafinha and Nico and Lewandowski and Lamine all together, and Pedri, and for sure that also means a lot of resources, a lot of options if you add a Ferran Torres if he stays, or Dani Olmo if he stays, and Gavi, and etc. But if that's the guy that you want, if Nico is the guy that you want, sure, go for it, as long as you have obviously financially the power to do so, which again, as we know with Barcelona, it might just prove a little bit tricky. And remember, a year ago, they also wanted him. He was not sure because he was not sure if he would get registered, for example, in that go through. So things have changed in a year. Are Barca better financially than they were a year ago? I'm not too sure, to be fair.
I think they are marginally better. I don't like this deal at all. I would focus on who's your long-term replacement for Robert Lewandowski. I'm not sure they need Nico right now if they think that that's a great price at which to get him. Didn't have the best of seasons in my view. And, if he's going to cost you an arm and a leg in terms of salary, what is the implication here? Because like you said, there's also, you can move Rafinha inside, but then you've got Dani Olmo, you've got Fermin Lopez, you've got Gavi, just a lot of bodies there. And I wouldn't want to shift Fermin Lopez or Gavi to make room for Nico Williams.
Marcus Rashford is reportedly open to joining Newcastle. Gab, question is, are they open to welcome him?
This reminds me, I really do not want to make fun of the people making, looking after Marcus Rashford and doing his PR, but maybe I will. It's the same people who like harassed Gecko into meeting him. Speaking of Barcelona, it's very simple. You are not on wages that are suitable for really any club in the world right now based on your performance level. That's not where you are. And on top of that, you got injured at the end of the season. So, yeah, sure. Newcastle, if you're Newcastle, you might say, yeah, okay, we like Rashford if he's going to cost this much in terms of wages, leaving aside the whole transfer fee that United might want. But Jules, where are you going to put him? Is he better than what they already have in that role? And this whole sniffy attitude about how he needs a Champions League club. Like, dude, get a grip about where you are right now. Am I wrong here, Jules?
No, I think they're all fair points. I'm not sure if you're from a Newcastle point of view with Barnes and Gordon already there, and all three of them preferring to play on that left-hand side, if that's really where your investment should go, to be fair. I know he had, I was going to say 6 good months at Villa. It was not even 6. He had good times at Villa, better than what we saw from him at United in the last 18 months before he switched to Villa in January. But I'm not sure that's enough for you to change everything that you've been in the last few years.
ESPN reporting that Thomas Partey, he's a free agent. He was in talks with Arsenal. It seems those talks have fallen apart, Jules. Is this a big loss?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was very good last season, especially in the second half of the season in that holding midfielder role. He's a good player. There's no doubt when he's not injured, and when he had that fit, he was fit for a consistent amount of time. Then you could see how beneficial he was for the team. But if you can't, it's not at all cost that you keep somebody like Thomas Partey, who's I think turning 31 this year. So they could not find an agreement financially. I don't know if he was not too keen on lowering his wages, for example, or how many years he wants in his contract. Zubimendi is coming. You already have also other options in midfield. And I think even if Arsenal don't sign another number 6, for example, they probably they might think that it's okay to go in like the scene like that. Or they thought if we can't keep Partey, then we've got a plan B, and let's see who that is.
I did at that age on those wages, because he was one of the club's highest earners. And with Zubimendi coming in, it really makes no sense. It's a very crowded midfield there. And of course, Lewis Skelly, even though we've seen him at left back, he's another guy who can fit into your midfield picture. It's where he played most of his career. And you have options. There's Declan Rice. There's, if they sign the striker, there's Havertz a little further forward. So yeah, I would not be concerned here.
Another player that could be on the move is Granit Xhaka at Bayer Leverkusen, and maybe on his way to Milan.
Yeah, I was waiting you to say it. Like, he sees Eric Ten Hag's bald head rock up, and he says, all right, GTFO, I want to go somewhere else. It's an odd one. In some ways, it reminds me a bit of when he left Arsenal, where he was sort of just kind of determined to move on. Allegri evidently trying to turn back the clock. Granit Xhaka, possibly Luka Modric in midfield. Like, they've obviously decided to build a team that's supposed to win now, maybe abandoning in some ways their long-term project. I think Xhaka was phenomenal 2 years ago. Last year, slightly more up and down, but he's definitely a leader, definitely has personality, and that's what Max Allegri wants. After getting knocked back on Brian Mbeumo, Manchester United have held talks with Eintracht Frankfurt over Ugo Ekitike. Jules, impressed, right guy?
So I'm really impressed by Hugo's season with Frankfurt in the Bundesliga. He was really outstanding. You could see the maturity that he plays with now, and things were a little bit difficult for him in Paris, but he's back to what we've seen before at Reims, the huge potential that he has because he's tall and he's so good technically. There's so many things that he can do all around. He's going to get better and better. So I understand. The question again is that Mbomo and Ekitike are two complete different players. I don't understand how you go from one, missing out on one potentially, and go for the other one as a plan B when they should not even be on the same plans, really. So we'll see. It's another striker linked with United. I don't know which one they will pick, which one they will go to. Ekitike will cost you a lot of money again, and you probably would need to let one of Zirkzee or Holland or maybe even both go. You've signed Cunha already for a lot of money. So I'm just waiting to see if United really are ready to spend 80 million euros or something like that on Ekitike.
Yeah, you could get Victor Osimhen for less than that. He costs you a bit more in wages. Guys, let's just be logical here, not complicate all this nonsense. And we haven't even mentioned Gyökeres, who I don't know. I don't know what to say. But yeah, Ekitike, a nice player. Is United the right place for a young, maybe a little bit raw, developing striker? See what Rasmus Højlund thinks.
Back to the Club World Cup. Juventus beat Al Ain 5-0 as my boy Randal Colomwani scores twice. Gab, all well again?
Al Ain were really, really bad. Juve scored straight away, and it was all downhill from there. I don't know how much you read into it, but it's important. Confidence boost. Chico Conceição played well. Keylor Yildiz was unplayable. Colomwani scored. Onwards and upwards. Borussia Dortmund are held to scoreless draw by Fluminense. They manage an XG of just 0.24 with no shots on target. Jules, is this Dortmund being really bad, or is it just the magic of the iconic Thiago Silva?
I mean, Dortmund were really, really bad. Were terrible. I mean, they got lucky not to lose this game, actually, and they struggled defensively, could not do much with the ball. There's a good cross from Adeyemi, I think, towards Brent some point in the first half, but that's it. This was a Guirassy had a decent chances, a couple of them in that second half, but again, not enough from a team that finished the season so strongly. But maybe it's normal. Maybe it's normal after a month without football that they are a little bit rusty and things like that. We've seen that with other teams, so I was not maybe too surprised in a way to see them stuttering a little bit there. And for Thiago Silva, it's just beautiful to see him. He's playing deeper and deeper and deeper, really. And part of it is tactically, part of it is the rest of it is him just not being able to run so much anymore. But he's great, and this Fluminense team was quite nice to watch, to be fair. Dortmund are not the only European heavyweight to have dropped points, Gabi, in this first round of group stages. How about Inter? Held 1-1 by Monterrey.
Yeah, held 1-1, but I thought Inter actually played well. And I can pull out the XG to prove it to you. Should have scored more. I thought they were front foot most of the time. And by the way, Aslani kind of faking the free kick to set up for the goal. Just like almost like a golf shot, pitching wedge in there. I think they were okay. Let's see how they keep doing without Marcus Thuram. And of course, Mehdi Taremi stuck in Iran. Mihailo Mudryk has been charged with doping violations by the Football Association. Jose, was that meldonium that he supposedly tested positive for. Maximum ban is 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years, as we saw in the Paul Pogba case, which I guess in a way is quite similar. So we'll see. He will have the right to defend himself. Mudryk, obviously, he said from the beginning that he was that he did nothing wrong in his eyes, so he will have the chance to defend it. To be fair, it's taken a long time to get to this point. So at least there's some movement, which is an improvement in itself. And let's see. All we want really is justice to be done. Whether he did something wrong or not. If he didn't do anything wrong, then bring him back onto the pitch. If he did something wrong, then he obviously will have to pay the consequences for it, which I think is completely normal. But at least now it's the start of that process where he will be able to put a case together to defend himself.
Yeah, Pogba's ban was reduced to 18 months, of course. I think the big thing with Mudryk is that Chelsea suspended him, I think back in January, maybe even before that. If he is found guilty and if he is banned, would this count as time served towards his ban? And the other thing I think worth noting is Chelsea eventually were able to terminate Juventus were able to terminate Pogba's contract. I don't see how Chelsea would be able to do that. Or rather, they could, but they would still take a massive hit on his amortization because unlike Pogba, He costs a lot of money, not a free agent.
Not everyone likes the Club World Cup, Gav. Liga boss Javier Tebas says that the best way to improve it is to eliminate it.
Yeah, he
Not a
didn't
fan.
enjoy it at all. Look, I can understand why, right? He's the Liga boss. He looks out for La Liga. He made the usual arguments about how, well, this is just a way for the bigger clubs to make even more money. And I have to say, look, Jules, we're in favor of this. He does have the point here that, the big European clubs essentially held FIFA to ransom in terms of negotiating a much higher prize money for themselves. And you can say, in a free market, from a business perspective, they're absolutely allowed to do that. And they did it with the backing of the ECA, the European Clubs Association, headed by our pal Nasser. All of that is fine, but you wonder if maybe they're triangulating now a little bit so that these clubs can set FIFA against UEFA, play one of the other to continue getting even richer. And maybe that's where kind of the sporting side and the business side collide a little bit. Or maybe Tebas just wants to look after his own backyard. Wild stuff between Boca Juniors and Benfica, Jules. 4 goals, 2 red cards, and a 2-2 draw as the Eagles stage a late comeback.
Yeah, it was great. Even 3 red cards if you count the one for Ander Herrera, who was off the pitch. He's been subbed off because he was injured, but not happy with some of the referee decision. Boca very physical with a lot of support. I mean, great support. To be fair, and that I thought that was a really entertaining game. You knew that at some point Angel Di Maria would do something, or the Argentines on the Benfica side would do something, and both of them, Di Maria and Otamendi, had big parts to play in this draw, which I think probably flatters a little bit Benfica, because I thought River were quite solid and controlled for most of the game. But
Boca even.
Yeah, we'll see what comes more next in the next 2 games. Gab, you love your Jorginho. Were you impressed with Flamengo's 2-0 win over Esperance?
I thought they looked good. My only thing is about this team is, and I'm so looking forward to watching their game against Chelsea, see how they measure up. There's so much experience. There's so much individual quality. I mean, you talk about ballers. I mean, when you've got Pulgar and Jorginho and George Andres Caeta all there, they can all play the ball, blah, blah, blah. What I wonder about a little bit is pace and athleticism and intensity. So if the game is slower, as it was against Esperance, I think they're fine. But even Esperance had a couple breakaways. But certainly for me so far, they look like maybe the most accomplished of the South American teams we've seen in this tournament, along with River. Don't know where you stand on that, but if you had to guess who can really make a dent, I think Flamengo have to be there. And by the way, so many Flamengo fans everywhere you look, as far as the eye can see. Mikel Arteta could lose one of his assistants, as Carlos Cuesta is reportedly heading to take over Parma. Jules, is it a big deal?
I think it's a big deal because he's 29 years old and he has 0 experience on the bench, proper bench, proper number 1, proper manager or head coach. So this is big. I believe this will be the youngest ever manager in one of the top 2 Italian leagues, divisions. So it will be a big gamble from Parma point of view. But why not? I don't know. He's very bright. Obviously, I know him a bit, and he's clearly very bright, has great ideas, a lot of energy, great man management guy in general, with players, but also with staff and people at club. So if this happened, we wish him good luck, because I think he would need luck in a league that he doesn't know, obviously. But yeah, I in a way, I like the out of the box thinking from Parma, even if there's, as we said, a lot of risk.
It feels like a huge jump going from, because he's basically number 4 or number 3 at Arsenal, because there's Stevenberg and then there's the other guy as well.
Yeah, no, it's a big step up for him. Maybe a bit too early even. Mamelodi Sundowns beat Ulsan HQ 1-0 with a goal from Ikram Reyners. Bagab. This game was overshadowed by the electrical storm that we mentioned a little bit earlier, and a crowd of just over 3,400 fans.
Yeah, like we said before, there's not a natural constituency, I guess, of South Africans and Koreans. And the other thing, which I think is also worth mentioning, is unlike a national team where you assume that, like, every Korean who's a football fan within, like, 200 miles of Orlando would want to be there. Many of these Korean football fans, hey, maybe they're not Ulsan fans. Maybe they'll be fans of Jeonbuk, for example, who's Ulsan's big domestic rival, or Pohang Steelers, and they're not going to want to be there. I think these are all part of the miscalculation. The electrical storms happen this time of year. I was speaking to somebody at FIFA who told me every single day since he's been there in Orlando for the last 10 days, you get the same storm at the same time, like clockwork. This is, again, it's one of the challenges of holding this tournament in the year. Manchester United have reportedly fixed their price for Jadon Sancho, and it's scaring folks away, Jules. 25 million euros? That's a lot, given the circumstances, no?
Yeah, and Chelsea were not ready to pay that after the loan they had, or pretty much the same, 20-25 million pounds, something like that. And clearly, it doesn't seem that there's much people queuing at the door to get Jadon Sancho for that price. We know that Napoli, for example, want a player that can play on that left side, and been linked with the likes of Garnacho, for example, with Sancho being an interest of them and Conte. Maybe at that price they think, like, well, actually we'd rather invest in a younger player that will be slightly more expensive in Garnacho, but where we think have more certainties. And I can completely understand that, and the same for the club. So we've been saying for weeks now, good luck to United, really good luck to finding a club for Jadon Sancho, because it's not going to be easy. Liverpool are taking a long, hard look at Getafe, and they could join the multi-club ownership ranks real soon. Is that a good choice for you, Gab?
I can see why they're looking at Getafe in the sense that, it's in a major European city, easy links in and out. It's a competitive league. You do have the risk that I think Getafe can qualify for Europe with some regularity, and I think then that will set up other issues with blind trust. I don't know. I don't really like the multi-club ownership model. I think it's hard to do correctly. I have some ethical reservations as well in terms of the impact it's had. So far, it hasn't bothered me, because most multi-club ownership groups, it just doesn't work. They don't do it well. Liverpool, of course, are smarter. We're told there's a big part of the reason why Michael Edwards came back was that he really wanted it. I would have thought you would have gone for someplace, maybe a step down, maybe the Portuguese league, maybe